Welcome to today's unit on Chapter 20 called Land Use Control. This chapter to me seems like a chapter that they went, hey, we got some pages left, what do you want to do? Let's talk about zoning. Okay. So you got to be kind of cognizant of the local land use that's going on around you, especially in the market that you're going to be working. You want to make sure, remember, one of your care was one of your fiduciary responsibilities, and you have to make sure, take reasonable precaution, make sure your client doesn't get harmed. One of those is making sure that they potentially don't buy the wrong piece of property based on their use, like zoning. So you got to be familiar with a little bit of zoning rules and regulations that we're going to talk about. Now, I will also tell you, you guys are not supposed to be the zoning experts, okay? So some of this is going to be useful, where some of it you're probably going to be more apt to tell someone else, hey, let's check on the zoning. We're going to talk a little bit more about the police power. If you remember the police power, one of the police powers we talked about was zoning. So today we're going to touch on that and the different provisions on how zoning is there to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. We're going to talk about 3 or 4 specific types of zoning issues that can change to help your client make the property suitable. We'll also be talking about things called the building code. Building code are construction standards for commercial building, as well as certificate of occupancy for residential properties. We're also going to talk about private ways in which we actually can control ourselves, like homeowners associations. All right? So not only is the government going to get involved, we can actually do it to ourselves. Okay, you ready? Let's start with Chapter 20 there on page 388. We're going to talk about land use controls. What I've got with me here, and for those of you at home can't see it, but it's not that big a deal, it is the Greenwood, Indiana Comprehensive Plan. All right, so it's the plan that Greenwood is using to help grow Greenwood. The most important thing that you'll notice on this cover, and I'll pass it around so you guys can look at it and go, oh, gee whiz, that's nice, because there's a lot of really cool color pictures of zoning plats and stuff like that. But the most important thing you'll notice on the very front page, the comprehensive plan says for the years covering 2007 to the years 2027. So it's a very long-range plan that is created by each municipality. So Greenwood has its own comprehensive plan. Trafalgar, even though it's still in Johnson County, would have its own plan. Bargersville may have their own plan. All right, so what we're going to be talking about, and I'll pass it around so you can look at it, you're not going to learn much out of it, but we will talk about the comprehensive plan. Now, what has happened is the state has pushed down these plans to the municipalities, and they do that through a thing called the Enabling Acts. The Enabling Acts allow the state to give power to some of the lower areas and delegate counties and municipalities the authority to keep their own plan. So it's not a state plan, all right? The state has delegated to each municipality and said, hey, you do your own, you do your own, you do your own. And then we will roll all those together up into the state. We're not going to do it for you. And they've done that through the enabling plan. One of the things that you need to understand is they do that through this thing called a comprehensive plan. Sometimes you hear it called a master plan. All right? The master plan or the comprehensive plan explains how each municipality is going to use, like, their land. How are they going to control the housing? How can they control the movement of people and goods throughout their community, like roads? which roads are going to be deemed as major roads. Now remember, this is 2027, so they've got to look in the advance. For example, for those of you on the south side that understand that 31 is a major corridor running north and south. They have progressively moved to each road, then Madison, and then they went to Emerson, and now they're over there on Chic Road is the next one, and they've already jumped that over into, what's the other one on the other side? What? Graham Road now. It's Graham Road in Johnson County, so it's Graham. And how they've got plans already, if you look, they'll tell you, oh, we want that to be mainly industrial and business, so we're not going to allow new houses to be built. All right, that's part of their comprehensive plan. Oh, Graham's going to be a major north-south road. It's going to be better suited to be commercial, so we're not going to issue building permits for houses on Graham Road. That's what you will see in that comprehensive plan. They're going to talk about things like schools and libraries and hospitals, water shed areas, wildlife protection. All of this is taken into effect in this comprehensive plan. And they do this through a process called zoning ordinances. The zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinances are what implement this plan. Once they have decided that the plan is going to be, hey, that's a major north-south road, then they've got to go through and say, okay, what zoning do we want there and what zoning do we not want? So they will effectively build the plan through zoning ordinances. And there are many different types of zonings. A lot of people think zoning just tells you what you can do with the building. That's not true. You have such things as aesthetic zoning. What does the property look like? You guys know Woodruff Place? A friend of mine lives in Woodruff Place. She had a roof issue, and they had to repair the roof. So she took the roof off, they fixed the roof, and before they could put the roof back, I'm using finger quotes, the mayor came back to them and said, hey, you remember our zoning says it's got to look like a cottage here. You cannot put a 3-tab asphalt shingle. You've got to put that slate roofing back on because it fits the aesthetic zoning that we want that look and feel in this neighborhood. So her roof went from like 7,000 to 17,000 because she had to match the zoning that was required for the look and feel. You've got building height zoning. Near airports, buildings can't be over 3 stories tall because of the airport. So you've got zonings in areas like that. You've got setback zonings. How far does the property, the actual physical building, have to be from the road in case they want to widen the road? So there's all kinds of zonings for the building. There's one called density zoning we're going to talk about. Density zoning is a very common, popular one, and this is how they can control population. It's through density zoning. Anybody live in Franklin Township? You know why your taxes are so high? You don't have a lot of people out there because they want, so their density zoning is very high. All right? Misspoke. It's very low. They only allow like 2.4 houses per acre. All right? Where Center Township may be different. All right? So density zoning is a very common way to control their zoning. Now, what I want to talk about is some of the zoning uses and types and classifications. The most common classifications that you are going to see for zoning, obviously, is you've got agricultural, residential, commercial. They break industrial out different than commercial, typically because of the environmental concerns that come with it. Then they have special use. Now, we've talked about all of these. Remember, special use is things you might see very few of, like the government, buildings, libraries, schools, hospitals, golf courses, things like that. And then there was one last type of zoning we discussed, if you remember, was the PUD zoning, or the wild card. So those are all zoning classifications that are used within the municipality. Now the problem is, for example, let's take the residential. And you guys don't need to know this as far as the exam, but just so that you get an idea. Residential actually has what they call R1, and I think it goes up to 40, but a common one is R20. R1 zoning, what would you assume that meant? Single family dwelling, all right? R2 is a double. And this is where you find a lot of investors can get themselves in a world of hurt, where they end up buying a double that they think's a double and find out it's in an R1 zoning. So a double's not allowed. Even though maybe the guy they're buying it from has been using it that way, hey, that's not the correct zoning. C1 through C7. That's commercial. C1, C2, very common commercial, like this office building, drive-up office. You want to park your car overnight, like a car dealership, you need a C5, which allows outdoor parking. So, for example, you couldn't buy an office suite in this building and run a car lot in the parking lot because it's not the right zoning. They don't want car lots in this area, so they will not allow a C5 business to work inside of C2 zoning. C7 is the large and commercial ones, like I think you can actually do animal sacrifices on C7, I'm not sure. Yeah, good to know in case you're going into that business. Let's change the audio.